Hi, my name is Abigail Justice, and you're listening to the Adams State Podcast. Today I'm here joined with the people from Write It Out.
Yeah, hi. I'm Michelle LeBlanc. I'm an assistant professor of English, and I'm a writer and a Valley person for quite a long time now. So excited to be here.
And I'm Will Rickards. I'm the coordinator for the adventure programs at Adams State and also an adjunct professor on the outdoor education and stewardship program.
Alrighty. Today we're here to talk about the Write It Out program that you guys have created.
Yeah, so this really grew out of a conversation with our new rhetoric and composition professor, assistant professor Nick Sanders. He also is the director of the CTR program, which is Center for Teaching, Innovation, and Research. And so we're talking about creating a more kind of robust, safe writing community where people can come together, learn a few things, but also just support each other. And so we went to lunch and I said, this is what I think we need to do. Let's gather the expertise on campus. I shouldn't be the only creative writing teacher. So let's gather this expertise on campus, do a program, but then hold space for whoever comes, whether it's students, faculty, staff, community members, come and just allow ourselves to sit and write, allow ourselves the time and space. Because I think that's one of the challenges is we think that we should just be able to write and just spit it out and be right and correct and have everything in the right place. But writing is this recursive activity. It takes practice, like a lot of things do, but we don't look at it at that when our schedules are just so full. So we wanted to create something inspiring. So that's why we're bringing Dr. Liebig and Will here to kind of get us juiced up to do that writing, and then we'll write.
I am actually taking a class with Dr. Sanders right now, and he talks about writing practices, and I think it's very in line with the program that you guys have created.
Yeah, good.
And then what is the activity happening on April 17th at 6 p.m.?
Yes, so Dr. Natasha Noel Liebig, she is a philosophy professor here at Adams State, and she is going to write about writing trauma. So what her main research focuses is phenomenology of writing on trauma and resilience. And so this phenomenology is what is our day-to-day experience? And we have these issues of trauma surfacing through COVID and through just the issues in our world. And we have a hard time expressing it sometimes. But writing about it is one way, a semi-therapeutic, not totally therapeutic way of, getting out of your head, getting onto the page. So she is going to talk about not only the idea, the concept of this, but also her own writing in terms of trauma and resilience. We are going to have the Adams State Counseling Center with us. We're going to have a few counselors because while we don't want to overuse the word trigger, if this practice or this lecture stimulates something, we want to be there to support people emotionally as well as through the writing itself. So when we talked, we thought that was a really important element to have as part of that.
Especially when you're writing about trauma. I'm glad you guys brought that.
Oh, yeah. And we have such great services here on campus. And I don't think we often figure out how to collaborate elegantly. And I think that's a really beautiful collaboration to bring attention to, we have this program that's free for our students. We should use it and make it more visible for them.
Plus, all the counseling people are really nice. You can see them around campus, and they'll come and say hi to you and be like,
"Absolutely,
hi," or they'll have those tables out in the sub building, and they'll be like, "We're doing this," or having activities. So I'm glad you guys included them as well.
Yeah, thank you. It's good. And then our third event is going to be, I need to look at the flyer. I forget what day we decided for you. It's going to be April 30th. We're going to start at 4:30 instead of 6. And Will here is going to guide us on a walking and writing meditation.
Absolutely. There's something that I know as an adventure paradox where oftentimes making life a little bit more difficult actually makes it easier. I can think of a number of students who spend more time avoiding getting work done than actually doing the work. I would say that's a very similar kind of deal. One of the things I've loved about being in the outdoors is it ties in really nicely with the writing trauma one. It being outdoors has been my therapy for 40 years plus. And I think what we aim to do is use both meditation, which is a way of calming the monkey mind, and it's just a series of exercises to recognize that you're thinking, have no judgment about the fact you're thinking, and let go of those thoughts. Right. So we're going to use walking as the tool for that. And then we will extend our walk into somewhere where, we obviously feel nature, and nature has this way of providing, and I think, hopefully people will walk away ready to write. And I think writing is definitely one of the other tools that I've used to sort of exercise my demons and to figure things out. It's if I don't want to talk to someone, then I write.
That's awesome. I like that we live in the San Luis Valley. We live in this place of great beauty, and we don't get outside of the classroom enough. And this is a way for us to feel our space differently and let it relax us to the point where we can get on the page, whether it's a poem or a song we want to write, or we're working on a novel, we're working on academic articles. We just want someone to be with us when we do it, but not in our face. I think if we are intentional about a practice and we allow ourselves to let go of those barriers that we build, because we are human. If we can let go of those in nature or on the page or both, that's a really beautiful use of like this academic and natural space that we have here on campus and just beyond.
I agree with that, especially like in the San Luis Valley. It's beautiful out here, and you can get to some of the most beautiful areas in the United States. And we have a lot of national parks around us as well that are just gorgeous.
Yep.
And even if you don't live near the San Luis Valley, you can go to like the beach and write. And I think writing is one of the most like the biggest expression tools that humans have, especially like other than speech, because writing, it's a way to hold our thoughts in that moment or in past moments, and then save them for future generations. And
for me as a young writer, before I was ever professionally trained, I would get caught in my head like I wasn't allowed a voice for whatever reason. And so if I could get on the page, it was this way of also speaking my truth with the pen and paper, but also letting go of the emotion of not being allowed that voice. And we have to have that. Like if our society is going to grow and develop in positive ways, we need to be allowed to express that.
And we've also seen like in history what happens to like people when we don't have writing or like a source of communication with like the Dark Ages and stuff like that. And so it's important to continue like writing, and especially for like future generations and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And I'm grateful that you guys are trying to teach like my generation that and that down, because let's admit, writing in a traditional sense is kind of a lost art form.
Well, I think in terms of journaling and self-expression, it's not that different from the academic writing, but like you were saying before, we put a lot of rules and stricture on writing. So if you're writing formalist poetry, what I found when I first learned poetry, and it was really here at Adams State when I was deciding whether to go back to grad school, and like in the first week of creative writing class with Dr. Guerrero Murphy, I was like, okay, this is my thing. The actual structure, while it was limiting, those limitations sparked a creativity in me and made me think in ways I hadn't thought before. And so I encourage people, and I have to remind myself, okay, this is strict. I have to limit this to a certain number of words, but I get to play with the words I do have a lot more because of those structures. It's a paradox. It's ironic.
It's freedom within boundaries.
It's freedom within boundaries. And we can learn a lot about ourselves from that, and we can expand our thinking and expand our vocabulary. But really, it's the thinking. It's the critical thinking.
It's a fantastic metaphor for life as well, in that, I think about, I will come up with a string of words. Mm-hmm. And the writing process is I then look at those words and I reorder them and I play around with them. I take some out, I add some, and suddenly the feeling that's generated is changed.
Yeah.
But I give myself permission to completely revisit things. And I think if we did the same thing in life, where we just take something and go, that worked, and it worked really well in that place, and then I need to get rid of that. My gosh, wouldn't life be that much better, more fulfilling, easier, whatever?
Right.
It's that, like I say, it's that paradox where by putting in a little bit more effort,
Right.
and the front end, the back end ends up being a lot easier. And
Right. And I think what's important about that process is, like, you're making these changes, you're revising, you're looking up different words, synonyms and stuff. And that all sounds taxing, but what it is it's an exploration. It's a suspension of judgment, where we're not beating up on ourselves for getting it wrong. No, we're just wanting to be more right. We want to express ourselves like more accurately.
Yeah, I'm just can't get this thought out of my head at the moment. I spent a 6-month period of my life with a gentleman called Simon Lappington. I was doing sort of field work, so dry stone walling, fencing, trail work, that kind of thing. Wow. And Simon was my boss, and he was also a poet. And I would start the day by going to his house. He'd have the coffee on,
right?
And we would just sit down for half an hour and play with words.
Wow.
And he had books and books of words that had been grouped together. And
words that are grouped together.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
And he would then come back to those books, and that's how he generated his poems. So I thought it was very telling that his first anthology was called The Legend of True Labor. And I just thought, that is the process. You spend time initially working at something, mm-hmm. but it's done in a playful way. Mm-hmm. And then you gather your work and reorganize it, and suddenly there's beauty.
Yeah, I think a lot of writers and a lot of writing teachers talk about revision as an act of love. An act of like nurturing a child to a full realization. And I would bring that back to, it's an act of self-love, of recognizing your voice, of figuring out what you mean. And sometimes if we can put language to something or music like you do, we can feel better and suspend that judgment, because we're seeing our potential when we push that edge. And that's what writing does for us a lot. And grouping those words together for meaning is super powerful. Even if it's only powerful to you, that's powerful enough.
My dad was my English teacher for like 4 years, and I took like so many classes with him. Like it's funny to look back on it and be like, oh yeah, I took 12 classes this one year with him. Mm-hmm. I don't know how I did it, but I think for me at least, I spent a lot of time around language and mm-hmm. music, and like some of the most profound things I've ever heard have come from like little kids I helped and volunteered with.
Yeah.
And just like the simple, sweet words that they say.
And they're wise. They haven't yet been squelched or mm-hmm. silenced. And I just love what they say. I'd rather spend time around a 4-year-old telling me what it's about than almost anybody.
Oh yeah, especially like I have one kid that I loved working with. I'm not going to say his name, but he loved animals. And so like every day, at the end of the day, I would go in and I would help out with this teacher. And he would get a little rambunctious because he was getting ready to go home. And I would be like, if you do this, then we can talk about these animals that you mm-hmm. want to talk about. And so for like the last 10 minutes, we would usually talk about whatever animal he he thought was interesting, or I would bring an animal and we'd just talk about it, and he'd be like, I can't believe this ever happened. Like, how did it evolve? What's going on? And he was so passionate about it. And I think everybody needs a little bit of passion when they write, like childlike wonder.
Yeah. And so putting these write it out workshops together is just like easing us into that writing space. Let Professor Tunis teach us how to be playful with the page. A page someone else wrote, but we can make it our own. Maybe dealing with some heavy issues and maybe just getting outside of ourselves by getting outside, right? To ease people into that writing space, to create a camaraderie between writers or people who want to be writers. Because I think one of the hardest things for me is like, I better research this thing before I write this part of my story or my novel. And I'm like, no, you just need to stay away from the device, Michelle, and get to the page. And like, I've gone as far as like, I've taken my writing completely off the computer because the computer has too many distracting things for me, including solitaire. Like sometimes I'm just protecting myself and playing it safe. And so I'm also selfishly creating the space and time for me. So while I will circulate and help, I will also sit down with my notebook and write some things down that have absolutely nothing to do with what I'm getting paid to do.
I love that.
Good.
I think it's so important to be selfish, and I think it's a completely underrated act, because inevitably when you are selfish, you're serving someone else at the same time.
I hope so.
I think so. I think if the intention is right, I think
some of the best acts in history have come out of like selfishness.
All right. Well, I'm going to embrace that then.
Especially when it comes to like writing and like the school of thought. Like some philosophers just were selfish, and yeah, they passed down their teachings, but they were selfish enough to want to learn, and I think that's important. And
something that an author I like, Jonathan Franzen does, he has a separate writing space. It has no computer, it has no Wi-Fi, it has no telephone, it has a light, and it maybe has a coffee pot. And he separates himself and creates that time. Well, he's a bestseller, and he's a literary bestseller in addition to that. So Stephen King talks about in his book on writing, which is really my favorite Stephen King book because I don't do the horror.
But I love horror novels.
Oh, you do? Okay, good. Yeah, just the little bit of horror he writes freaks me out. But because he's that good of a writer. But he talks about his book on writing, how he had this like really elegant office with the big oak table and all the accoutrements. And really after his accident where he was hit by a car and broke his legs and stuff, he like stripped that office down so that there weren't those distractions other than the trees outside. And for me, if I have the wood stove fire and maybe a dog by me, I can undo about anything, but that's an unusual situation.
How many times can I reorganize those pieces of paper?
I know, like all the tchotchkes and the junk, and I'm like, does this pen still work on my desk? And I'm like, no, you just get no.
I do have to say, I agree with you with the wood fireplace. My favorite place to write is at my aunt's house. She has a wood fireplace, and I'll just sit on the floor writing essays next to it.
Yeah.
So I want to throw down the gauntlet.
Uh-oh.
No, not just for you.
But
also you, Michelle. It's very easy not to sort of to avoid things like this. It's very easy to sort of find an excuse to not come.
Right.
I'm going to say, come join us. A lot of people don't believe they're writers. I can guarantee you that you are.
I can guarantee that too.
I can guarantee you that you'll have a good time, but more importantly, I can guarantee that you'll start accessing part of your mind that you probably haven't accessed as much as you should have done recently, and it will do you a world of good.
Right.
And you'll walk away feeling inspired and knowing what it is to be fulfilled and knowing what you need to do.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. F. Scott Fitzgerald, his writing process, or it was Hemingway, I don't remember which. No, it was Hemingway. His writing process was to read what he wrote the day before, edit it, and then go back into it. This can be kind of similar. You don't have to do erasure poetry or write about trauma or write about nature when we're doing these things. You can bring what you are working on. You can come tabula rasa, blank slate. You can do that. I think the powerful thing is that writing is the demonstration of knowledge, and we have a lot of different kinds of knowledge. And so we want to help you capture that in a way that's healthy and self-loving and fun. And we're going to feed you a little bit. We're going to have snacks and
Great.
I know, snacks.
That was on the poster.
It's on the poster. Feed them and they will come. Just like Las Vegas, build it and they will come. Feed them and they will come. So we're not only going to have water, but we're going to have Capri Suns. I hear those are very popular.
They are, especially with college students.
Yes, so we're loaded up on our Capri Suns. We're giving out, because the Center for Teaching, Research, and Innovation has sponsored this, they bought notebooks and pens for everybody.
Nice.
So I'm picky about my notebooks. So hopefully these are the good paper I thought I was ordering. Fast writing paper so that you don't have to stop. Fast writing pens. And so that'll be free to everybody. And show up.
To mention the program, you guys will have 30 minutes of lead program, correct?
Yep.
And then 90 minutes of writing time where you are allowed to work on yourself. I mean, writing by yourself or in a group.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything you want to do. And we'll be there to, answer questions, guide things along, or to just, all you got to do is put the hand up and we know, we're just going to leave you alone. This is your time and space.
Thank you again for coming on. Is there any way to contact any of you if they have any questions?
Yes, people can email me at mleblanc@adams.edu. So MLEBLANC @adams.edu, or you can call the university and leave a message on my phone.
Alrighty. I think, any last words?
No, I think that's wonderful.
I think
Super fun.
Yeah.
Thank you,
and
Abby.
this
Thank you
with
very much.
inviting everybody to write and come out to these activities.
Or not right, even.
Or not right. Maybe draw, maybe doodle. Maybe
Yeah.
that's your thing. Do it.
To express yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I want to thank you guys for coming on, and thank you for everybody listening to the Adams State Podcast.